is Sham. Today we have with us Amanda from Ascend Virtual Solutions. Am I saying that right?
You've got it. It's services, but
Oh,
solutions works too.
services.
Good.
Ascend Virtual Services, and she's going to share with us her virtual assistant journey, how she got into this space, how she's liking this space, and where she sees herself going in this space. So, welcome, Amanda.
Hi, Shamika. It's nice to meet you. Thank you for having me.
Yes, thank you so much for joining.
Of course.
My goal here is really just to inspire other women and men potentially, but I'm a
Mhm.
girly girl, so I want to inspire women because I too work a 9 to 5, and
Love it.
when I got into this space, had I known, not had I known, but when I first got into the space, I had to leave my corporate job because it was just toxic, right?
Mm,
But
yeah.
I didn't even think about getting another 9 to 5, even though I liked what I do with my
Mm,
9 to 5, because people were so
yeah.
like, if you're an entrepreneur, you got to be an entrepreneur. You can't have a 9 to 5,
Yeah. It's
you
true.
know? And
I
then
get
in
it.
2022, I was like, no, I need to go back to work. Like, they don't tell you like
Mm,
how much money you need for marketing and how much
yeah.
money you need for these different things to invest in coaching to get yourself to that next level that you need to get to.
Absolutely.
So if you have your 9 to 5 and you can work your 9 to 5 and build your business, I highly recommend it.
I love
So that
that.
seems like
Yeah.
to be a little bit of Amanda's journey as well. So I can't wait to
Yeah.
really get into it.
Yeah.
So, what initially inspired you to get started in this industry?
Yeah. That's a great question. So I have the same viewpoint, in the sense that it's nice to be an entrepreneur, but I think before you're like off the ground, you really need a secure and stable income so that
Mhm.
you have peace of mind while you're working your business. Um, I'd been at a company, they worked in the HVAC industry for about 3 years. And around 2021, I kind of just felt like it was my time to exit the company. Great relationship with them, but I kind of felt like for my career trajectory and growth, I wanted to do something else. So I
Mhm.
decided to leave. But right after I left, I started toying with the idea of like, what if I do this by myself? I've done it for this company for so long. At some point, I felt like I was helping manage the office, accounts, like think about every sort of point that you can be a virtual assistant for. I was doing that for this company.
Mhm.
So that thought was in my mind, and I was like, what would it look like if I branched out? So I started doing research. That summer, I left the company in May 2021, and maybe between June and like August, I was just researching the industry. I was watching videos, like whatever I could find on virtual assistant at the time, I was doing it. But what actually happened was the adverse effect of like getting scared. So after doing all that research of wanting to do this by myself, I was like, you know what? I don't know if I'm confident enough to start this myself. So I'm gonna look for an agency. I'm gonna look for a place that already is established. They would look for the clients for me, and I would kind of just like sit back and do the work, focus on what I do. So I pivoted to that, worked with this agency for maybe about a year. And funny enough, before 2021, I had thought about this during the pandemic, but again, because I was working, I didn't it didn't click that I should have
Mhm.
done it at that point, and that would have actually been the perfect point to do it. So worked with this agency for a while. I worked with different CEOs, some in finance, people in like the commercial cleaning industry, sort of this diverse pool of individuals that I was supporting. Some they
Mhm.
just needed basic inbox management, and then another person, she really needed someone to be her right hand, like working with her clients, securing the contracts, taking the appointments. So I
Mhm.
got a bit of a taste of that, and it felt a bit like I was being cheated from a cost perspective or just from a pay perspective because the agency took their cut. So maybe they were charging $30 or so for the client, but we were actually getting like 18 bucks.
Right.
Um, because they needed to cover their costs, and you couldn't actually like work with the clients after you left the organization. They had a like
Mhm.
they had a clause that
Yeah.
you couldn't take clients, you would get in trouble there, so there was some legalities there. So I kind of did that and then it's been a year, thought about it, and I'm like, do I want to keep working for this agency? It seemed like it was taking a lot more of my time. The compensation wasn't great. And then at that point, we're at 2022. I'm like, okay, there's no harm in me even starting to like market myself, like having an Instagram page, looking on Facebook groups, and having my own thing because the thought that had always been in my mind is that 9 to 5 is great, but you're always working for someone's company.
Right.
And when you think about your future, like for women, we might want to start a family. We might, and that might mean maternity leave one day.
Mm-hmm.
So I think the motivation eventually became like, even if this doesn't replace my 9 to 5, I'd love to be able to build something that at a time of my life, if I can't work a 9 to 5, I have the clientele and I could still provide for myself and whoever it is
Yeah.
else that I'm providing for. So that was like a bit of the motivation. Also, I feel like a lot of people who have immigrant parents
Mm-hmm.
um, would understand the struggle of like parents who'd been in a country for 30 plus years. They didn't necessarily work great jobs. And then, like, retirement wise, it hasn't been the easiest. So that was also another motivation. Like, if you have your 9 to 5 and you have something on the side, you're not going to struggle. Like, you're going to
Right.
be able to support yourself, save, and also support those that you love. So that's a bit
Mm-hmm.
about like my um, beginning. I kind of just said, if I'm doing this for a company, why can't I do it myself? Like, why can't I be my own boss? So that was how I ended up being a virtual assistant. At the time, I don't really think it was like fully defined. Like, a lot of people were like, oh, is it just admin work? But it's definitely evolved beyond just admin support. So yeah.
Yeah. So I you touched so many great points, but just to pick off where you just ended about it being more, so much more than administrative work, like this is far beyond virtual assistants, do technical support, we're
Mm-hmm.
building websites, we
Yes.
are managing their their customer base, right?
Yeah.
Like there's just so many different we're managing projects for their teams and for
Yes.
them. And
Mm-hmm.
so that is like another part that I want to show people is like where you start in virtual assisting is not where you're going to end.
No,
Right?
no.
And I recommend you starting out like how you said you worked with an agency who had a plethora of different types of clients. Like even
Yeah.
though I never worked for an agency, when I started myself too, it was like I had a restaurant owner I worked for an attorney,
Yeah.
I worked for an engineer, I worked for a lady who was a notary, I worked for a lady who was
Yeah.
a domestic violence coach. Like in that
Mm-hmm.
really showed you like what areas you like and like
Yes.
where you may want to niche down. So I always tell people,
Absolutely.
and you can tell me if you recommend this too, like get into something like that where you can get a broad array of everything that this business has to offer. And then
Yes.
like your second, third year, you can start niching down and saying, oh, I really like working with restaurant owners and planning events, or I really like working with nonprofits, or whatever the case may be. But you got to get that
Yeah.
experience, that whole full thing.
Yes.
Um,
Yeah. No, I agree with that. And it makes you, I think it makes you sharper when you have a wider lens because you kind of do multiple things at once. You isolate like what you really don't like.
mhm,
You figure out sometimes what you really like. And then also like sometimes it just helps you in other areas of your life. You're like, okay, like maybe from a career perspective, I
mhm.
actually enjoy working with this type of person. So it's a bit of like a personality test, sort of like a, you know, like a life sort of goal thing. It does a lot for you. And I've heard it's something that I think a lot of people struggle with, but I used to hear a lot that people would say like, "Oh, just niche down, like niche down. If you don't niche down, like you're not going to get the clientele." And I think
That's
that's what hinders a lot of people, right,
mhm,
into coming into the field because they're hearing this rhetoric of like, if you don't pick a path, then you're not going to get clients. And
right.
it's that's not entirely true, right? Like you have people who still do general administration as virtual assistants and they're wildly successful and you
Mhm,
have people who are like, I'm going to be a client experience specialist, and that's what I'm
right.
going to do. So there's
Mhm.
no wrong or right, like you said in the beginning. Like there's so many opportunities, and
Yeah.
everyone's journey is different. So you definitely shouldn't be caught up in the like pick one and just do it.
Mhm.
Um, yeah, you could start with a bunch of things and then narrow it down. No one's forcing you, especially since it's your personal endeavor. no one is telling you like you must pick.
Yeah.
If you don't pick, you're in trouble.
Yeah. And I think sometimes, honestly, like from like a corporate mindset, sometimes you feel like
Yes,
you have to do what these
yes,
people are saying because, like,
yes,
we're new to this industry and they're telling us to do something
absolutely.
very specific. So it's like, you need
Hmm.
to do that. You need to do that. But we're telling you no,
Yeah.
you don't.
No, don't listen to them.
Yeah. So now that you have left, are you still with the agency or you left the agency?
Oh, I love them. It's been about yeah, it's been almost 2.5 years now. So yeah,
Okay.
I still have a really good relationship with one of the individuals I worked with at the agency. And funny story, when I left, they had actually like offered me to work with them on the side. But I think there were some circumstances that I was like, I don't, from an ethical standpoint, no. But then also from like a mental health standpoint, it's like, no, if I'm leaving the agency, there's a reason I'm leaving. So yeah,
Yeah.
those things do happen sometimes as well.
Yeah. So now that you have your own clients, what are you
Mhm.
primarily focused on in your business?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I'm still sort of general. I think only recently have I gotten to the point where I'm like, I actually, because I'm a service-based business, I
Hmm.
think I want to focus on service-based businesses, but I don't have like a one client that I want to support because I like the variety. I actually like being able to say that like I support different people and
Yeah.
I just love that. So right now with my clients, yeah, it's still pretty general. There's a client that I've been working with on a yearly basis since maybe a year and a half or 2 years ago.
Hmm.
And he's just someone he's in the business world, he's in finance. So he has a lot of like thoughts in his mind. And we started this thing recently where he'll send me voice notes of the lessons that he's learned like during the week in all his meetings. And I'll compile them because eventually he wants to write a book. So
Oh.
I'm sort of like his second brain in that sense. Like he puts the ideas in a voice note, and I
Hmm.
just draft that up for him. I send it to him, and then on a weekly basis, he's like reviewing what I send and he's adding to it. A lot of like data management as well. Like
Hmm.
again, all these different networks and wanting to put them all together. So creating systems in like Excel that would allow this person to pull a name and contact them or know like what region they're in and what their connect point is. So a lot of that, even as simple as like reminders for birthdays, I've done like where I have a list and I'm just like, hey, just reminding you this week it's this person's birthday. Like, be sure to reach out to them. Um, I'm also working on a current project with another client that is, they had a lot of backlog of like archived emails from the pandemic and they
Hmm.
sort of like shifted it into one aspect of their inbox. So for the last, I think it's been about 6 months, we've been working on clearing up those emails and filing them into Clio, which is like an external other. I would say it's a CRM as well, like because it manages your clients and it tracks everything. So
Hmm.
making sure those emails enter the system. And then they also had like a big um like they had physical documents and sort of in the age where people are transitioned from the physical to digital, they scanned a bunch of these documents. So also now categorizing them and
Oh.
like determining what clients like they fit with and then filing it also into that external system. So those are like a bit of the project, still a bit of general,
Hmm.
um, but very much in that systems like moving from one area to the other and organization, which is sort of like my first love. If I could organize anything, I will. Like from computer systems to like the house, I definitely will do that. So I
Yeah.
love that even in the general, I'm still incorporating that love for organization there. So yeah, like it's some of the projects are like so random. I think when I first started with another client, they had a list of baby recommendations. Like their wife had just given birth and she had put together some recommendations for like strollers and diapers and like this just massive baby list. And I
Uh-huh.
had to beautify it. So I was able to like take all that information, color code it. And then they also had notes. So they wanted to share this document with their other friends who might be going through the same like experience. So I
Oh,
had to like make sure those notes were nice and it ended up being this like nice Word document that's like a baby guide for them. So that's like neat
that's
projects.
so
Like you don't really
awesome.
yeah, you don't expect. some of these things. And I think that's why I sort of like still being general, because I like to be hit with the like, can you do this? And I'm like, oh, yes, I can. Like,
Yeah.
sure, why not?
Bring it on. I'll try
Yeah, like,
anything,
well, why
right?
not? Yeah.
Yeah. That's awesome. You've had some really great experience, but like you said, I think it's because you're choosing to work outside the box. We're working outside the box and working with everyone so we can
Yes.
figure out exactly what we want to do, and maybe what we want to stay like that forever, right? Like I still work with a
Yeah.
wide variety of clients as well. I just
Absolutely.
niche down on the services I offer.
Great.
So there's other ways you can niche down, and that's only because I have
Yeah.
a couple subcontractors now, and so I just want to keep
Yes.
it, you know, like where we know what we're doing all the time. So
Absolutely. Yeah.
yeah,
That's great. Yeah.
yeah. So in the early stages of your business, what would you
Mhm.
say was like one of the most difficult challenges for you?
Yeah. Honestly, it's funny because I don't, because I've been working in administration for so long, like the
Mhm,
virtual assistant part of my journey feels like a smaller aspect. So I honestly feel like I'm still learning.
mhm,
And some of these challenges are like still ongoing, but I think very early on it was just process.
mhm,
I had done a course with an individual who's like a virtual assistant coach. They have their own like agency as well. So it was trying to get out of the mentality of like, okay, you've worked in an office and now how do you do this by yourself? Like from a contract perspective, invoicing, just working with them, what does that flow look like, right? Like your sort of procedure to work with this person, which is a bit more standardized. I've kept it very simple.
mhm,
Um, I don't, I know some people are like big CRM fans. They like have things automating and like running and jumping. And while I think there is a bit of, there's some validity to that, and I
mhm,
have a bit of that in my work, I'm not to that point completely because I still like the personal aspect. So
uh-huh,
definitely simplifying things. I think another piece for me was just like you would hear people saying be consistent on social media, like be visible so that you can, be approached by people.
mhm,
And Instagram is like I started on Instagram and recently I've had thoughts about like how to diversify that. But I find that with Instagram, it caters to a specific sort of type of content and a type of sort of brand situation. Like a lot of influencers thrive on Instagram because of what they're marketing or selling.
mhm,
So it was interesting as a virtual assistant to like be in that space. Like, are you aesthetic? Are you just like telling people what you do? What's the algorithm picking up? And then all the statistics. So I think a bit of the nervousness from that has kind of led to like this inconsistency with posting. But I think people also may mistake that for like, oh, you're not getting clients when it's like, no, actually, you can get clients offline and your business can still be successful. It's just because if you're one person, you're
mhm,
managing like the clients and then you also have to think about the content and you also have to think about like your growth. So
mhm,
having to be like multifaceted and being the person behind the operation can be challenging.
mhm,
I will say like content specifically with social media, it's like, what do you post? And I think a lot of people still struggle with that because are you posting based on your niche? Are you posting like your behind the scenes? Like, what are you posting? Especially when you work a 9 to 5, right? So a lot of my hours for my business are like after 5.
yeah,
So it's this balance of like you've done your 9 to 5, you're finished, you're tired, and then you still have to show up for this client, and of course they wildly appreciate that. So I think the word for me has been simplicity. Like I sit on my couch and I create content now because I
mhm,
used to think it had to be this like big,
production,
big process. Yeah, like go to a studio, like, and you can. I think there's like
yeah,
beauty in being able to go get your content and have a bank to roll from. But
mhm,
then just the idea, like you have B-roll, like you could be walking to the store and you could take that video and make it your content and still make it relevant
yeah,
has been important. So just trying to lean into simplicity because I think when you're running a business, there are already a lot of different technicalities that you're under. So
mhm,
making everything else as simple as you can make it will sustain your business, right? So
yes,
yeah, and obviously perfection is also part of that. I feel like um, a lot of what you see on social media like influences how you try and curate your page. So I
right,
think when things don't look a certain way, you're like nervous. Like if I post this, is it gonna bust? Like no one's gonna, like it.
yeah,
Um, and getting over that fear of like, you know what, post anyway, it's not about being viral. It's just about, again, people
Get
seeing the
it
consistency, new clients being able to go like, oh, this person, like, look, their credibility has gone up, right? They don't
out.
have like three posts on their page and no one knows them. So yeah, just a bit of those. I think some of those challenges are still very much present. Um, and the idea is just like not letting that perfection guide you. Like perfection is great, but it also hinders you from doing
Yes.
a lot. So
Yeah.
just doing it imperfect and, brushing up as you go, you learn new things, you implement it in your business. Like you said, like sometimes you'll have new service offerings. You'll decide one year that I'm going to pivot. I'm no longer doing this and adjusting. So keeping it simple as best as you can so that it doesn't feel overwhelming, especially when you also have other priorities in your life to consider.
Yeah, that simplicity is key. Like you keep going back to that simplicity, and that is like a big thing I preach is simplicity.
Yeah.
Because like keep it simple. Like I was so glad when you just
Hmm.
mentioned about the CRM because when I
Yeah.
first started, I had the big old CRM and I had all these things, right?
Yeah.
But a lot of my clients were old school. They didn't
Mm.
want to learn how to upload their documents and click up so that they can send them to me so I can work
Yeah.
on them. And so I was like,
Hmm.
why am I paying for all this?
Hmm.
When I have time to send an email back to my client, I have time
Yeah.
to send a contract, and when it comes back, I can execute it and send it back. Like, I don't
Yeah.
really need that, and I actually
Yeah.
have subcontractors, and I still don't really use my CRM. I don't really see the point. Like, I write up my
Mm.
proposal. Like, even though you have the CRM, I still have to write my proposal so I could see
Yeah.
if you have like clients just coming in on a crazy basis, and I haven't
Yes.
used that yet. Then
Yeah.
all those bells and whistles, but then you
I
go back
know.
to if you're not making the money, like why are you paying for this? Like when I first started, I had two clients making $1,000 per month, and I'm
That's
spending
crazy.
$50
Yeah.
on Honeybook a month and $50 on this
Mm-mm.
month and 50, like I don't got no money left after, you know,
Mm-mm.
like
Mm-mm.
keep
Yeah.
it
The
simple.
profit is gone.
Yeah.
Profit
So
is gone because like you want to be like not fancy, but I do think like people fall into the trap of like I want to have this process like nailed down so that everything just works. No, a good old email, like you have 5 minutes. You can
yeah.
send a like, I got this email, I'll get back to you.
Yeah. Create
Yeah,
an SOP for your business so people know like
absolutely.
how you guys flow. We have the discovery call, we send out our
Yes.
proposal, we wait for them
Yep.
to execute, we execute, you know what I mean? We
Yeah.
send the invoice with the second execution so they can pay their retainer
Yeah.
up front. Like you can create your own processes. And I think
I
that's
love that.
important for people to realize like keep it simple. Don't get caught up in the hoopla of, you know, I appreciate all the Dosado experts and the
I do.
Honeybook experts and all these different
Yes.
people because they're working with people who are at a level who need that.
Yeah,
You know what I
exactly.
mean? But
Yeah.
you as a new virtual assistant, I'm in year 5, I still don't need that. Like, you
Yeah.
know?
Yeah.
And so just yeah, keep it simple, keep it simple. And even with
Absolutely.
content, how you were saying, I loved how you
Yeah.
were breaking that down. Like, don't I find when you stay authentic to yourself, like, you know, like my home's not aesthetically pleasing. I'm not a designer by any means. You know what I mean? Like,
You're preaching to the choir. I mean, like you literally have to make things work for you. Like if you go to a restaurant, if you're at a cute cafe, like sometimes your intention is you're going to work, but it
yeah,
could also be like I'm gonna grab some B-roll shots so that I can post it. Nobody need to know I went to work there, but I
right.
have the content because these are places I go. So
Mhm.
your opportunity to create content is everywhere. Like if your house is not the place where you think like this is fitting my brand, find a plain black, black or white wall. It
Mhm.
always works for you. You don't need decoration in the background. You just need your face. People either need to see you talking, they need to hear the message. So
Yeah.
that's the biggest, I think for me anyway, like that was the biggest trap that you can fall into. Just
Mhm.
this idea like it has to look a certain way, has to fit your colors 100%. Like everything has to be perfect. It's like, no, it's not going to be. People want to be sold to by human beings. Like they
Yep.
want the relationship, right? They don't need the like your coffee mug is here and this nice poinsettia is here and today
Yeah.
this is like they just need you. Like you're the one working for them, right? So they
Yeah.
don't the extra stuff doesn't matter anyway.
Nope. Um, so hmm, how would you say like you set yourself apart from other virtual assistants in the industry?
Mm. Yeah, honestly, like I'll keep going on the trajectory that I was going around, like relationships.
Mm-hmm.
I I'm a very relational person, so I think one thing that I've tried to stay true to with my clients is just like that softness in relationship. Like, yes, this is about money. Yes, it's a bit transactional, but still keeping the warmth at the heart of the business, checking in on them. When you start emails, how are you doing? Like, it's not like, here, give me my money. It's like, hey, I hope you've had a great week. I send, happy holidays messages if that's what um, they do. Merry Christmas. So just being warm. I'm not saying that there aren't like warm virtual assistants, but I do think when you get to a point like and you're operating your business, sometimes it can just become like, we have this project to do. We're done the call. Let's go.
Yes.
So it's sort of like the what happens in between. And then also communication wise, I over communicate. So I think with clients, sometimes they don't expect the like, we're working on a project. I'm checking in midpoint. We're having meetings about it. So yeah, like I find that that's important. If you are in constant communication with the client,
Mm-hmm.
there's very few things that are going to be missed. And like background wise, in terms of what I do, I work in the conflict resolution space. So a lot of like how I manage my clients is like through that lens, right? And that understanding and trying to avoid miscommunication. And I think that in my background has helped me a lot. So yeah, just that relationship oriented piece is really important for me. And I do think people are leaning more towards that, like trying not to sell, and trying to, build that community. So that's common language that we're hearing on social media and just like trending language. But that it is just the person I am. Like before I ask you for money, like I'm gonna check in. Like
Yeah.
before I ask for that raise rate, like I'm gonna check in, right? So that's yeah, I hope to just keep that going because it does make a difference. That's why people want to work with you, right? Even if they don't sign a contract today, they could do
Yeah.
that one day. That's what happened with my first client. Like I kept that relationship with him and I think he signed his contract maybe like after 4 or 5 months of conversation. It was just like that. Keep them
Yeah.
engaged, be present, and build that relationship. So
Yeah.
that's really important to me.
That's key. That's key because as service providers, I tell people all the time, they're buying us. They're buying the
Yes.
vibe. They're not
Yeah.
buying what we say during the discovery call we can offer them, even
Mhm.
though we can offer them. They're going off. Does this person feel like, do I feel like they understand me? Do I feel like
Yes.
they know what I
Yeah.
need and they can really help me? They're just going by
Yeah.
that. They're not going by, oh, she has a master's degree in this and that. They don't
They
care.
don't care. They do not care. You can
Okay.
bring it up all you want. They don't care. You could have a PhD in like land science. They don't care. Like,
Yeah, they wanna know if you're relatable, if you care about them, you care about their
yes,
business. Did you research before you came to this discovery call to figure out what they got
yes,
going on in their business, right?
yes,
Like, they really care, and I think that customer service piece has really been missing
yes.
from this industry because I think
Hmm.
in 2020 when everybody was getting into it, it was like,
Yes,
I'm my own boss. I can do what I want.
yes,
I don't have to
yes.
tell my clients this. I don't You do. If you
You
work
do.
for corporate, you know you're responsible to keep your clients informed. You're responsible,
Yes,
to keep all the ball
yes,
rolling and keep everything on track, keep the relationship in a good standing because you need those
absolutely.
clients to survive. So
Hmm. Hmm.
I preach a lot about customer service now because the customer service is I just not just virtual assistants, I'll just say in the world in general, customer service sucks right now and I hate
Yeah,
it.
it's not great. It's
It's
not great. Like,
not at
I
all.
think people have forgotten the fact that like you exist in the world because like you need one another, right? Like you
Yeah,
don't we're not just here because like, oh, you just take from this person and you go. Like you're supposed to help each other. So
yeah.
that's definitely like I would say that for sure. Like with virtual assistants, like there were a lot of people who got into it for the money. Like it's not
Mhm.
that they wanted to make a quick buck, but it was the idea that you could set your own rates and you could set them significantly higher and
Yeah.
they can't complain because you're your own person.
Yes. Yeah.
um but yeah, that customer service piece, like even if your specialty is not client experience management, you
Mhm.
still need to be customer service oriented because
Right.
your clients will keep paying you if you're kind and you're following up with them and you're taking feedback, implementing the feedback. Like
Mhm. Yeah.
You're a business owner. Like you need to just be customer service oriented. That's like number one before everything else.
Yeah, and if you don't have that skill set, then you need to be working on getting somebody in place to talk to your customers that have that skill set because
Yes,
yeah, it's gonna make you lose a lot of business. I'm telling you. Like I had a
absolutely.
client recently who fired someone who she brought on the team just to like help us out. I
Mm.
manage her speaking gigs, and the lady just was talking to her like really crazy, and she just was like,
Oh,
"Shamika, I tried to hire somebody to help you, but I'm gonna
oh,
need you to take this all back because she was
yeah.
talking to me, like telling her, like, I've been trying to get like, like I've been trying to get a hold of you for 5 days and
Mm-mm.
now you want me to do this? Like, what? This lady is
Oh,
paying you every month. You don't talk to her like that? But
wow,
that's just an
wow.
example of how people get so into themselves, really. You're into
Yes,
yourself because this lady is
yeah,
paying you out of her pocket,
yeah.
and she has a nonprofit. So they're not even like these rich people. They don't have all this money to be paying you all
Tell
this.
me about it. Like
Yeah,
not
like
for profit is not the place to joke. Like if they're giving you their money, it's serious because
it's
it's not like
serious.
a highly funded industry, right? So
Yeah.
that's
So,
wild. Yeah.
but yeah, so I digress on that one, but
Oh, we could talk about that all day. Like customer service really is like
it's
there's so many. It's simple, but it makes a big difference too.
yeah. When you were getting into this industry, what would you say, like, what support system or resources were
Mm,
like really crucial in helping you build your confidence and
yeah,
grow your business?
yeah. So I had mentioned like I had done a course previously.
Mhm,
It was something when I said I was going to get serious about it, I went through the course. I don't know if I found it as impactful because I think a lot of what I had understood from the course I'd actually already done research on. So I would say, like, the number one support system in the world before you get a coach, before you start pushing money to other people, is like, see what you can find. You'd be
mhm,
surprised, like, how much resources are on YouTube, how much resources are just on the blogs. Like, the amount of free information in the world is like key. If you're really diligent, you can actually like start your business without investing in nothing but that research. So that would be like number one, especially when you think about like this, like, I'd hate to say like the state of the world and the economy. You
mhm,
may not actually be able to spend like $200, $300 initially. So it's
mhm,
okay to start with research, which I definitely did with that. And then
mhm.
as you go on, if you feel like you need the support of a coach or someone who is wiser than you in the industry, who has more experience, then you could also lean on them at that point because you have the funds and you can invest in yourself in that way.
Yeah.
So I also had like a friend on social media, like we met online, and their content was geared more towards finance, but they had done virtual assisting. So I did some coaching with them. They continue to be a great resource around finances, just like having a side hustle, virtual assisting. They
Mhm.
actually had done like an ebook, and I helped them edit that ebook. So I was able to also like pair my research that I found with like what they had written in their book, and a lot of those things corresponded. So again, simplicity. I feel like I didn't go out and just like find five courses and buy it. I started with the research and then I bought the course and I thought the course was well done. And
Mhm.
again, having someone to mentor you and support you, I feel like those are like the key things. You do your research, you mentor, and if the course works for you, do that as well because it is beneficial,
Mhm.
and can bring light to a lot of things that you might not know, especially from the like legal aspect of running your business and the like process aspect as well.
Mhm. Yeah, I love that you said that because you don't need money to really get started in the virtual assistant industry. It's really about if you're willing to put in that research. And a
Yes.
lot of people are just like looking for not I don't want to say a quick fix, but kind of like a quick fix.
Yeah.
They think like there's this magical button you can hit, but it's really if
No.
when you see those videos about setting up your foundations and invoicing and all that, like set all of
Yeah.
that up and then just get a client and then you're going to figure
Yes.
everything else out. And as you scale,
Yes.
now like you're saying, now as you scale, now you're going to need a coach or a mentor to help you, figure out where you're going next and how you can do these things because I tell people all the time, virtual assistant industry is so cheap to get into. Like you literally have a
Yeah.
laptop already. Or if you don't have
Mm-hmm.
a laptop, you have a phone, offer email management.
Mm-hmm.
Like there's so many
Yes.
opportunities for you to get in here and just make money without spending money. And that's what
Yes.
we want to do. So I think those were key points that you really hit on
Thank you.
with that whole thing right there.
Yeah.
So let me see. So if you knew some people trying to or women trying to get into this
Mm.
industry, what advice would you give them um, about becoming a virtual assistant, but they may feel intimidated getting into this space?
Yeah. Honestly, if I'm thinking about myself, like even 3 years ago, the one thing I would have just said was just start. I think when I reflect on when I actually had the idea and when it manifested itself, there's a gap of time that I feel like what you said earlier around like, you start and then like as you're scaling, you learn,
Hmm.
right? So taking the opportunity when you start to think about it, just see what you can do. Put it out to your network. Even if you don't tell your friends, like just put it online somewhere.
Hmm.
Facebook group, Instagram, put out an ad, just say something and start because it makes a big difference. I feel like if you start when you have the idea, the place that you'll be in when you think about years from now will be so different than when you actually start, which is like, again, we don't need to think about everything in the gap of when you didn't start, but you get what I'm going with that. Um,
Yeah.
and the piece around again perfection. When you just start, it's not gonna look perfect. And if you're someone who is wanting like a certain aesthetic, it's gonna bother you a lot. It's gonna bother you that things look a certain way, your content doesn't look a certain way, your systems don't look a certain way. But like I said before, like perfection can hinder you from your growth. So
Yeah.
think about the right? The perfection will come later. No one is perfect. Even when you've done it for 25 years, not everything is going to be 100%, right? So you
Mhm.
don't, sometimes you start and it's very unclear, but you just have to keep putting your foot in front of the other. And once you get that first client, it's like it changes everything for you because it
Yeah.
builds a confidence that like you can do this. Then, God willing, the second client will come. And
Hmm.
then that second client might refer you to someone like the second client I started working with was a referral from one of my best friends. So
See.
I can say that like there's been a variety in how you reach those clients. It's not always going to be from social media. It's not always going to be from your networking. Sometimes it's someone in your own house knows someone who needs help and
Yep.
they put your name out there, right? Your friends, your network. So just start. That's the important thing. I think once you start, like the clarity will come, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, it's
Word.
better than
Just
sitting there and being like, what if? What
yeah.
if like, oh, I
Yeah.
didn't do this now. It's booming and everyone's making money but me. Like, no, just start. Like even when it feels like it's oversaturated, just start. Like there's
Mhm.
enough clients out there for everyone, right? So
Yeah.
yeah,
You guys heard her.
I would
Just start. Get into this
yeah,
space. Just get started. Like
yeah.
it sounds so cliche, but like really there's nothing to it but to do it. Like you got to do it.
It's
So,
true. It's
yeah.
true. That's what Nike knows that. They said just do it. And it's actually very, very true. Like yeah, you don't need to, you need to give it some thought, but I feel like if something keeps, and I don't know, like there's some people who might be people of faith and people who are not. But for me personally, like I think there's a prompting when you start to think about something and it keeps nudging at you.
Hmm.
There's a reason it keeps nudging at you, right? You don't ignore that feeling. Like you lean into it and if it's meant to be, God willing, like things are going to fall into place for you. Don't ignore what you're consistently thinking about, right? If it starts to bother you at night, you're waking up at some point in your day, you're like, what if I just
Yeah.
do it?
Yeah.
That's all. I have to say, just do it. Like
Yeah, I love that. God does not give us visions for no
no,
reason. Like he's not
absolutely.
pushing us. He's not keep telling you you need to start this business, you need to do this, you need to do
Yes.
it. You do it.
Yeah.
Your
Just
blessing.
go.
I'm a strong believer and if you don't take action, that blessing gets passed to somebody else. And
It- Someone
I'm not
else will eat
tripping
your
with
money.
no blessings, okay?
Nope, 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 nope. Someone else will consume your money. This is the time and day for it. So yeah, just
Yeah.
start. Take it from us. Don't think about like again. Also, I think watching people online can have a really hard impact on
Yeah.
how you navigate your business, right? Like you look at, we've heard the rhetoric, oh, I made 10K in 2 months, or the like, I'm this kind of coach, I will get you to six figures. We know all of that rhetoric.
Yeah.
Some people, it's true. I know someone who's done that. but
Yeah.
it's not always the case. So just focus on your own lane. Like
Yep.
think about your vision, focus on your own lane. And when you focus on your growth, like that's when things can happen. Maybe you too can get to the six figure a month, but
Mhm.
also maybe you too can just be like, I'm good with two clients, I'm good with three. I just want a bit of cash. Like
Yeah. Like,
again, everybody's growth levels different. Everyone's, priorities and what they want out of their business is different. So think about what you want,
what you
execute
want.
that, and keep going.
Yes. That's a good point. I remember making a post like 3 years ago saying, so you're saying nobody wants to make an extra 40K a year? Like, because everybody wants to make six figures, but I'm showing you I made
Yeah,
40K extra on top of my 9 to 5. What would that do for you and your family? Like,
absolutely.
so it's like, don't get stuck on that. Everybody's so stuck on that six figures. It really
Oh,
irritates me.
mm-mm.
Like, six figures, six figures, six figures. Like,
What about
please,
the seven figure? What about
okay.
three figures, four figures? Those are all numbers.
Yeah.
Those
Can
are
we
all
just get started?
numbers.
Like,
Get
yeah. And like,
started.
where we are today, an extra $1,000 for a family, $2,000 for a family
Yeah,
a month is a big difference in their life. You know what I mean?
makes a difference. If
So,
even if it's just yourself, for
mhm,
me, like, and I know this is like I may be jumping ahead, but like you starting is like the difference between you want to take a vacation somewhere
mhm,
and that start allows you to do that. You
yeah,
starting is like you being able to maybe tell your corporate job or your 9 to 5 that like, hey, I want to work part-time now. And being able to supplement the other half of your income
mhm,
with what you're starting with, right? So don't it makes $300 even a month extra. That's a bill for next month, right? So it's there's a varying level of how much this industry can give you. It doesn't
mhm,
have to be five figures. It could be four. It could be three, and it still makes a difference in your life, your savings goals, like your freedom, the activities that you want to do, how you want to invest in yourself, like your maintenance. It makes a big difference. So
yeah.
it's extra money. That's the point. Even if it doesn't become a full fledged career, it's extra money and someone will benefit from it in your life if you don't.
Yeah, yeah. I love that. I really love that. Um, so as a virtual assistant,
Mhm.
how has your personal life, do you feel has how has it been impacted um as you become a virtual assistant and you became successful? Like, how has your personal life been impacted by that?
Yeah. Yeah. So apart from like what I just spoke about, the fact that it can help you with like certain goals, right? If you have financial goals, being
Yeah.
able to have a business that can help fuel those financial goals, it's helped me build an emergency fund. That is
Mhm,
not language that I was familiar with maybe 4 years ago. And now it's something I can confidently say I'm doing because I know that if I'm to lose my 9 to 5, I have a secondary income, so that's definitely like from a personal perspective, from a finance perspective, that's been, wildly life changing. The financial security and the freedom that I feel like has come from being a virtual assistant, in addition to having a 9 to 5. Feel like being able to support your loved ones is another thing
mhm.
because
That's a
nine
key.
to fives are great, but when the money only goes as far as like being able to pay your bills,
Mhm.
there's a barrier, right? So being able to have that extra money that you can either like sow into someone's life and help them and even like support others in your life, that's been really important to me. And then I think personally, like just from a motivational intrinsic value aspect, the idea that I've been able to advocate for myself is so, it's so life changing, right? Setting your own rates, working with your own clients, determining like how you work with them, what hours you work with them, setting your boundaries around when they can, disturb you and when they can't. Like that's impactful because with a 9 to 5, like you're working 9 to 5. You don't have a choice. Like you have to complete those hours. But when
Yeah.
you do have a business, you can say, like, I'm working 4 hours on a Saturday if you want. I'm working two after work and that's it. I'm taking the summer off. I'm taking a break. So I think it's just helped with um a bit of order in life and also like creating your boundaries around certain things and again being your own boss. Like we hear that a lot, but it has helped. I think it builds confidence and it's given me like a boost around like what I can do in my life, like and the rooms I can step in and be successful in. So I would say that I definitely feel like overall I'm working more. Like
You are.
doing their 9 to 5 and that's their prerogative, but it's like you're doing a 9 to 5. And funny enough, I remember this summer, I didn't take much time off in general. Work was really busy,
Hmm.
but I was working. We had the option to get Fridays off, like half days. So I was
Hmm.
working like, I think 9 hours every day for regular 9 to 5. And then also like pushing 2, 3 hours after work. So
Yeah.
the summer I was working like 12 hours. I'm like, I'm not in the medical field and I'm working 12 hours. That's a problem. But I set the hard boundary that I wanted my Friday afternoons off. So
Hmm.
by that measure, I just wasn't working Friday afternoons, and that was a difference. So I think one thing, again, people talk about all the benefits it affords you, and there is some sacrifice, right? There are going to be times that you don't go to a birthday party, you don't go to a restaurant. Sometimes it's time with your kids, sometimes it's time with your partner, sometimes it's just your free time, you can't have it. So again, it's being able to prioritize, and you'll have longer hours than some, but it's the cons,
Yeah.
are lower for me than the positives. So it's just how you do it, and also how many hours you set to work. You don't have to do 40-hour packages if you're working 9 to 5, because in
Yep.
a month, that's crazy on top of your already 160 hours that you're working in a month, right? So, you know, the cutting your code according to your code size, like you do what works for you. If you're working a 9 to 5 and you think you could do a 30-hour package in a month, do that. But if
Yep.
you can't, see what works for you, and sort of measure that way so that you don't burn out
Hmm.
um, faster than you need to.
Yeah, but I like how you were saying like you're working harder because a lot of people think like you own a business and you don't work as hard. No, that's
Mm,
years down the line. That's years.
yeah,
Like for
yeah.
those first, I'm not even gonna say 5, maybe 10, because I'm still
Oh,
working just
for
as hard.
sure.
So I'm
Yeah,
like, you're gonna work and you have to be willing to, put that time aside now because like I said, like I have
yes,
couple contractors and eventually I'll be out of the day to day. But then you
yeah,
have some clients who don't want to let you go, and those are like your top earners. So it's like you have to
yes,
maintain that middle ground between them and your subcontractors. So it's like
yes,
you're
yes,
always going to work as an entrepreneur. So I don't think you're getting to this space for to not work because I think
yeah.
entrepreneurs work more than anybody I've ever come across.
They definitely do. They definitely do. Like
Yeah.
before I did virtual assisting, my sister and I bake. So we had like that experience of like working with clients. And I remember when we were going to do that, people were like, "Oh, like just do it," because we'd done it for years.
Hmm.
And when I tell you, like at least the first year that we started, the blood, sweat, and tears, people just see the product, but they don't see the you at 3 a.m. yelling at each other. They don't see you at 4 a.m. falling asleep by the wall. They don't see the like what the kitchen looks like after. They just see the product. So in the same breath, like it's with virtual assisting, like you could be pulling long hours. Your
Hmm.
client just sees the products. That's
That's it.
what they're there for, right? Like they care that you work hard, but they
Yep.
don't care that like it's taking you that much time, right? So yeah,
Hmm.
you just sometimes it's like you just gotta suffer for a little bit, and like one day the suffering will be gone. Like
Yes.
it, that's the reality. You
That's just
figure out how much suffering you want.
it. Looking back on your journey, like what do you
Yeah.
would you say like you're most proud of now that you've kind of gotten to doing your own thing and you're running your own
Yeah.
business?
Yeah, I feel like I could rattle off like a bunch of things. I still feel like I'm so proud of the fact that the first client I got, I've been able to maintain them on like a yearly contract basis. So when I first started working with them, we worked maybe like 3 months together. And like the second month, I had like my whole script ready around like, so we've been working together. Like I would do this thing in the beginning, which we would do our check-ins. I would ask them like how the month has been, would do like some reflection, what's gone well, what could use adjustment, what can we do better like in the next quarter. So the second month I came in ready to have that conversation of like, like we're reaching the end of the 3 months. Like, how are you feeling? Do you want to renew? Like, what's up, right?
Where are we at?
Get into that, go, where are we at? And then I get into that conversation and he's like, honestly, like, I don't see why we have to keep having this conversation every 3 months. Like, I want to work with you like for a long time. So let's just do you have a possibility to sign a contract just for 1 year? And I was like, yes, this possibility is endless. We could do anything. So we did that. And then again, we get into the next year. And it wasn't that same conversation. It was just like, what do we want to achieve this year? Like, do we want to do another year contract? And he's like, yeah, let's just do another year. Like, and some clients don't find a point in that. They'd prefer to just have you for a longer period of time than like every few months,
Mhm.
can we do this again? They're like, we don't care. Like, we just want to work together. So I'm really happy about that relationship because, again, when we talk about security, there
Mhm.
are there's waking up and knowing that like in 6 months you don't have to ask someone like, do we need to work together again, or how you're feeling, right? Just having the you're starting January, we're going to go to December and
Mhm.
everything in between. So really proud of that because I know that's not a lot of people's like stories when it comes to virtual assisting. People are more, you kind of get into the industry and people understand that like you have your contract. So you said it, whether you want a 3 month, 6 months, 9 months. I know a lot of 3 monthers.
Yep.
I haven't really heard a lot of like 6 or 9 months, but like I just know a lot more people who have the 3 month contract
That's
and they renew.
popular.
Um, and my advice, if I didn't go back to it, would be like, if it's not by force, like it has to be coming, the willingness has to be coming from the client. But if there's a way for you to, you know, work longer contracts, please do that for yourself because the
Yes.
peace of mind that you have when you think like I can do this for 6 months and then broach that conversation versus like every quarter, it's significantly less stress. So if I could
Yeah.
have like five more of those clients, I would definitely do that. Because it helps a lot. So I definitely think that's like my biggest success story. The fact that like this was the first person I decided to
Yeah.
work with, and it's also been probably the easiest relationship. And like I'm not worried every 3 6 months having to, say like, hey, are we renewing? So it
Yeah.
like whatever works for you, first of all, but like if you can somehow figure out like what timeline works better for you? Like when do you want to be having those renewal conversations or those raising rates conversations? Like try and bargain for more than you think
Mhm.
that the person would want because you'd be surprised what your client would tell you like, hey, I don't yeah, like I don't need that conversation like every three
Yeah.
months. Like
Yeah.
I'm
Because
busy
you'd be
enough.
surprised
Like
how many of them really don't even know how long they signed up for in the beginning anyway.
They don't. They know because
So
you outline it. I remember like part of the whole like having a system thing is after my discovery call with this individual, I sent them an email around like why, we're doing this 3 month contract. The first month is sort of just to like learn sort of what the business is. The second month, like, okay, we have a bit of a handle on that. We're working on the projects. The third month is like, okay, we're good, like we understand each other. We're working on the projects we need to work on. They had that understanding, but Shamika's right. Like they sign the paper and they're like, "Oh, how much do I owe you? Like, what's the invoice?" It's not at the forefront of their mind. So like, you have to figure out like you're running your business. And I think a lot of us, when you work 9 to 5, you can again fall into like the employee mindset. And again, that's advice. You're not an employee. Like they work with you. Like you don't work for them. So
yes.
all
Yeah.
these things like you get to determine the length of time you want to work with a person and when and all of that. So yeah.
Yeah. That was a good point. I've never heard anybody touch on that, but it's something that I changed very
Yeah.
early on because my clients were being annoyed by the 3 month check in as well. And I modified
Yeah.
my contract to I just tell them, we have a 90 days. Before the 90 days, either one of us can cancel this thing. You don't
Yeah.
cancel by the 90 days, we're locked in for a year and then we'll do this.
Yeah.
So I
Yeah.
found that to work a lot better for me. Because like I said,
Yes.
you're not really paying attention to me anyway. They want to know how much the invoice is.
Oh.
They really want to buy. They
Mhm.
want to know how much the invoice in. When can you start? Because I need you to start
Yeah.
yesterday, and
Yes.
that's it.
Last week.
So
Yep. Yeah.
that is a good one. That's a good one.
Yeah. Thank you.
If let's see, if you had to tell the women listening, who might be at the beginning of their virtual assistant journey, what's one piece of wisdom or encouragement you would share with them and you wish that someone shared with you when you first started? And we touched on
Mhm.
a lot of those, but like what's one that really
Yeah. Yeah. I would say two things, like aside from what I've already touched on, like the possibilities are endless. Like don't limit yourself to specific things. Like try out what you want first, what you're interested in, and then whatever happens after it happens, like things will organically work out for themselves. And
Yeah.
then another thing I would say, like, this is really important because you're not operating a 9 to 5 and this is your own business. The idea of like raising your rates is not something that a lot of um, new virtual assistants do, not
Mhm.
because like they don't want to. There's a lot of discomfort about asking for more money and like understanding that you're not being, you have to think about the cost of living, right? And the standard of living and like how things are becoming more expensive. So if
Mhm.
you started off charging like $20, you can't operate for 5 years charging the same $20, right? You've got to put some increases in there. So that's even something like I'm speaking this advice as something I want to speak to myself because money conversations are not fun.
They're
But
not.
being able to say to like, hey, even if you're raising it by $2, like that's extra money that
Mhm.
you didn't have. So get into the practice of put that in your contract. And I've also understood that like it doesn't have to be in your contract as long as you give them advance notice, whether it's between 30 and like 90 days. If you give
Yeah.
enough notice, your clients will likely not be caught off guard with that. So get into the habit of doing that because if you decide that you only want to work with um like a small amount of clients, that is the way that you're gonna make money
Right.
from continuously and continue to put that in the bank. So yeah,
Yeah.
that's it's like I'm speaking advice that I wish I had implemented early on, and it's people don't really talk about it, unless
Yeah.
you have a coach. And like I got this information from someone who is in the system, so they were like, "Are you raising your rates continuously?" I was like, what is that? And you don't, yeah, like it's not, you hear about like niching, you hear about like having good service offerings, you hear about all the different things, but raising your rates is not like a common conversation. So
Yeah.
it's, again, it's one of those murky areas around like how much you raise them by and like when you do it. But I think it's a bit of trial and error. Like you give
Mhm.
enough notice, you make it a comfortable raise, and then again, you could do it, raise it for the year, you could raise it every quarter.
Yeah.
You determine like what you want to do. So being, it's an uncomfortable thing, but being uncomfortable with discomfort and just you're running your business, right? So at the end of the day, if someone has a problem with you raising your rates because you need to eat, they are the problem. You are not. So
Okay.
naturally, your clients will understand. If you say like, "Hey, it's 2025. Like we've been working together a while. You started with less experience, and now you have more experience. Like you have valid reasons to
Yeah.
make the argument." And the worst thing your client can say is no. And then
Mhm.
at that point, it's your, choice whether you want to keep working with them or if you want to come up with an agreement of like, okay, the next time we renew, that way they have enough advance notice. If it's a year contract, they know next year that if they sign again, the rates
It-
are going to be higher. So yeah,
yeah.
it's a bit of like bet on yourself. You're in it to make money, so try and do that whichever way that looks like, right? If you're someone who like your client keeps giving you extra projects and it's not within the contract, like have a different rate than what you charge them.
Yeah.
Have a emergency rate. You've got to think about all these different circumstances that your clients won't think about and make it worth it for yourself. So those would
Yeah.
be like the main things I wish in the beginning someone told me. And you build your comfort with that. But yeah,
Yeah. I think that's a key one right there. And also like, coming from corporate, we have these years of experience
yeah,
and you come
yes,
in and you start off at $25 an hour. I'm making 45 in corporate with 20 years of
mm-hmm,
experience. I'm
mm-hmm,
not starting from the beginning. If I knew what I know
no,
now, I would have not ever created a package for freaking $500 a month. Like, what was I thinking?
yeah,
But you don't
yeah,
know until you know, right? And with the
mm-hmm,
expertise that you have coming from corporate, you're really like you may end up managing someone's whole business and you're charging
yeah,
consistent rates of $500
yeah,
a month. And that's really what I was doing when I started because you know all these different things to do and you're doing
yes,
it for free essentially.
yeah,
That
yeah,
conversation to you're like, "Oh my god, I'm going to lose this client." And like you said, you learn if they're for me, they're for me. And
yeah,
If you send that invoice saying I'm going up next month to this price, they're just gonna pay it. And I luckily when I
Yeah,
got the courage and I sent that out, everybody just was like, okay. Like,
yeah,
but some people don't have
yeah,
that. Some people are like, oh no, I'm not gonna do that. And you gotta be comfortable saying, okay, well, at the end of our
yeah,
contract, we'll end this and best of luck to you. And maybe we'll
yeah,
get back
yeah,
together when you realize what I actually had to offer. But like you said, you have to take into consideration. I think that too is why it's so important in the beginning to like track your hours using like a time tracking tool so you know how
yes,
much time you're really spending with clients and doing
yeah,
that work, because you could be severely undercharging yourself if you don't know
yes,
how much time those things are taking.
yeah,
So yeah,
yeah,
yeah, those
yeah. And I
key.
like that, like for the point about like where you came from, right? Like you don't discredit your experience.
Yep.
So another thing is like for people, if you're not someone who does like a virtual assistant resume, but like if you do, you've got like I had 5 years, I would say, like in administration when I started as a virtual assistant. So
Right.
that experience went on the resume
Hmm.
because all the things that you're asking me to do virtually, I've done for someone's company, like pulling all the big bucks in. We've done that. So don't discredit, even if you're starting as a virtual assistant, don't discredit your experience from corporate, from wherever you're coming from, because that's all the reason why like you're not charging $15. Like
Yeah.
you have the credentials, right? So yeah, make that work for you as well. Like it's the way you market yourself. Like people think, okay, because you're labeling it virtual assistant and you're starting, you're a beginner. You're not.
You're
You're
not.
not. If you have 25 years working at a law office, that is, you're not charging $15, $20, right?
Yeah.
So, yeah,
Yeah.
like think about your past experience and like how that gets morphed into, and it doesn't even need to get morphed because what it says is like this person is trustworthy, right? Like they do this in their career, they can do this personally as well. So, yeah,
Yeah. And I think that touches back to too, like just showing up confident. Because I don't know about you, like I've never created a resume as a virtual assistant, and I know a lot of people
mm,
have, but I just
yeah,
felt like if you show up confident on a discovery call, I've never had anybody ask me because I just knew what I was talking about, right? So I
yeah,
think if you're really confident and of course you're gonna get some jerks who are like, well, can you do this? And but I just felt like those aren't my people. I
yeah,
don't need to explain to you what I've been through,
yeah,
like I'm telling you. And
yeah,
so yeah, I just think that that's really important too, is for you to realize that if you're show up confidently, and you can have your
yes,
resume prepared, but I'm guaranteeing you most people won't ask you if you know how to help them. And if you're
yeah,
listening, because during discovery calls, don't talk and oversell yourself. You shouldn't even be mentioning you, except for the fact that my name is Shamika. You know what I mean? I run this
hmm,
assistant business, and these are the services that I offer. Now, can you tell me
yeah,
your issues? Because that's what we're here for, is their issues,
yeah,
to explain what we can offer to them. At the
yeah,
end you say, hey, I think I can help you with this particular part, but maybe I can't help you with that part. But just be confident and show up and be yourself
yeah,
ultimately
yeah,
as well. you know
yeah. You're
so
not
yeah.
an employee, so get out of that. I think people. I looked in the beginning. I didn't have like yourself. I didn't have a virtual assistant resume. Like I only developed one like quite recently,
Hmm.
just for myself, even to like track like my experience. But I
Hmm.
didn't start off with one
Yeah.
because your words should be like true. If you are lying, they will find out.
We will
But if
find
you're not, like it's very, very like they'll know that you're knowledgeable. So
out.
yeah,
Hmm.
like even the discovery call, I think a lot of people can go into it like an interview because
Hmm.
that's what you're used to coming from the employee side. But you like they're asking for your help. Like you could go and do your own thing, right? So you need to learn about them. It's not they're not interviewing you, right? And a lot of people, that's what it becomes. They come in and they're like, so what do you bring to the table? It's like, no,
Nope.
no. It's not about my table. Today we're talking about yours. What is on your table? Like what can I take off your plate, right? So
Yeah.
that's also common. Like as a new virtual assistant, it's very easy to get into that employee sort of
Yeah.
trap. Like I have a resume, I'm applying for jobs. It's
Yeah.
just yeah.
Letting them run
Get
your
it.
discovery call. I've had that with myself in the beginning. Like you get on the call, the client's just running the whole thing. Everything you wrote down, like I'm like, I didn't even get to like, you know.
Nope. Nope.
Now
Nope.
it's
They
just like
rattled everything off.
and I'm confident and I'm telling you what we're gonna talk about, what we're gonna do on this call, and then you're going from
Yeah,
there because
yeah,
that's when you get the best result is when you show up confident and because this is our expertise that we're showcasing here. So
absolutely. Yeah,
so
yeah,
yeah.
that's I
This has been
100% agree.
yes, this has been a great conversation. Like I feel
I
like we
love
can just
talking
keep
to you.
going and keep going.
Do a whole series together. What not to do when you start.
Right. We might have to come back and do us a part two, you know?
Loved
Um,
it. Loved it.
but before we get out of here, Amanda, I want you to share with the people like what new services you're offering, or not even new services you're offering, but if you are taking any clients in the new year,
Yeah.
if you're going to be mentoring, what do you got going on, and how can the people find you online and work with you?
Love it. Thank you so much for having me, Shamika. It's been a wonderful experience. I feel like you think about podcasts and, sometimes you're nervous. You think it could be an interview, but you've created such a warm environment. So I appreciate that. Um, I'm on Instagram as ascend.vs. Same thing on Threads. Threads is wonderful. If anyone enjoys Twitter, Threads is the new Twitter. Yeah, like in the new year, sort of keep doing what I'm doing, keeping things simple, managing my time. I would definitely love to get into VIP days in the new year. That's another thing I didn't touch on. But for any like aspiring virtual assistants or even people who are just doing the regular contract right now, having VIP days where you can set a number of hours, charge like three times your rate, which is normally what happens,
Mhm.
is also another way to funnel more cash into your business. So I'm definitely always taking new clients because you never know what's out there and wanting to also try the VIP days because that seems fun. So wanting to keep my business going. I want to do a lot more of this. Not necessarily speaking engagement, but just connecting with other virtual assistants and building that community. So if you're
Yeah.
listening and you're like, oh, I need someone to just talk to, I need a friend. That's the point, right? Of being in an industry that not a lot of people like in regular society understand that. So yeah,
Mhm.
that's me. I can also drop my website. I don't know if you have like show notes after, but I can drop my
Yeah.
website and
I'm gonna put all that in our once I edit this
yeah,
video and everything, we're gonna have
we'll
everything
send that.
so that they can
Perfect.
click
Yes.
and find you. And where
Okay.
do you see yourself in 5 years? I always like to ask everybody the last question. Where do you see your business in 5 years? And so we
Yeah.
can go back and revisit this.
Yeah, that's a good question. You don't sit a lot of times to reflect on that. But again, in 5 years, I hope to have a clientele of very calm clients. Luckily, I have not had like horror stories,
Mhm.
and I hear a lot of people struggling with that. So just keeping the relationships I've kept with my clients, like even if we're no longer working together, building that network. I definitely want to get to a point where it just feels like your hands off. I don't know if I'll ever get into the agency, but recently I've been having more of like an inkling of connecting people. So I don't know if that's something that I might be Shamika 2.0 in like 5 years, or I'm like your subcontracts. But yeah, I think I'm not limiting myself. Anything is possible. It'd be nice to just like feel 100% about everything you're doing and knowing like you work with specific people and the clients just come to you. You're still doing some work, but yeah, a lot less, I think, running the business and the business running itself. So yeah,
Yeah.
totally open. I feel like I can't even think about it. I have goals around just like the business continuing to run because that I think is the success story, right? Starting something and being able to hold it and it
Yeah.
actually bringing in that income. So that is the focus. And yeah, I think one of my loves recently has been like wanting to do more systems. So maybe in the next 5 years, like I might pivot and be like fully systems. Who knows? I'll be building out things. But yeah, that's
It's a
definitely a lot of
hard question, right? It's so much
yeah,
packed
not
into
easy.
being a
It's
VA and
true.
you can pivot at any
Yeah,
moment. But I
yeah.
just like to reflect back and see like where we
I
actually
love
end up
that.
because pivots are they're gonna
Oh
happen.
yeah.
They're gonna happen
Oh,
in this business for sure.
some
So
people pivot every other month. They
oh
just I here. They're like, I want to work with real estate agents. Okay, no,
yeah.
I want to like. Yeah, it's very common, and it's
Mhm.
part of it speaks to the human condition, right? We're all evolving. So
Yep.
where you start is not where like you want to end up, right? You start with something and you want to grow and you want to keep going up. So that is the goal. Like hopefully in 5 years, if we have this conversation or we revisit this video, it's like you're in a different place than you were, and some of these like nervous self-doubt pieces like are out the window, and you're just like stepping into these conversations like a boss, and kind of go to bed at night. You're like, that was a good day. But yeah, it's a tough question, but it's a good reflective one to think about for sure, especially um, there will be new, younger, brighter, stronger individuals that come into the industry, right? So it's also like staying relevant in 5 years. Like we would hope that like we're still relevant and our clients like still trust us, and
Yeah.
the heart of how you started your business and why you started your business is still standing. So
Yeah. And I don't think we're going anywhere, right? I think that
no.
even major companies are getting into hiring virtual assistants. So it's like, I think we're here for the long haul. And I think
Absolutely.
now there's no better time than now to get in, even though people feel like we're oversaturated. No, we're not.
Oh
There's
yeah,
tons of
no.
clients out here waiting, and they're waiting for you right now. You haven't started, and they're waiting for you. The
Yes,
people that are waiting for you are still waiting because you have not started. And I think it's so important to just, like you said, have confidence. Amanda told
yes,
us to just do it. These are all things
yes.
I preach to you guys. Listen to Amanda in this episode, and you are going to go far. I honestly see you as someone who's probably going to be a mentor or a teacher because you like
Oh,
broke things
that's so
down
sweet.
so well.
Thank you.
So that's going to be interesting to follow and see where you end up with
Yeah,
that, because I think you have some good stories to tell and you're very
yeah.
positive. And this has just been
Thank
a great
you.
conversation, girl. I'm so
Loved
happy and
it.
excited to meet you.
Yeah, I'm happy that part of doing this was I actually told myself next year, I've been in like a coaching call and I said like, I'd love to do podcasts. Like I would love to talk to someone and like share my story. It doesn't have to go everywhere, but like I wanted to do that. So it's interesting how we connected, and it speaks again to like just taking the opportunity. You set a goal
Mm-hmm.
and something happens, right? Like I think I had said that, and like within days I saw like your communication. So
Mm-hmm.
yeah, it's interesting when you say you want to do something, the opportunities that appear, and it's up to you, like whether you want to take those opportunities and you keep going, right? You never know what happens. So yeah,
Yeah, and I think don't miss it, right? Like you put yourself
don't
out
miss
there,
it.
don't miss your time. Like when things align in the world like that, to me, it's just like divine timing, and you don't want to
Yes,
miss that because you don't know when it's coming back. So, um,
absolutely.
yeah, so you guys, I hope you guys really enjoy this episode. And if you guys have any comments or questions, feel free to comment under the video, and I'd be happy to answer any questions you have, or reach out to Amanda if it's a question about her and her business. And until
Absolutely.
next time, peace.